What's up, everybody? Welcome to Poets and Politics, the podcast where poets and politics end up intertwining. Don't know if that's going to be our slogan moving forward, but that's what it is for today. My name is Brandon Leake, and I will be one of your four hosts for this reoccurring podcast. To my left, we have
TwoSense,
a lovely poet who will tell you about himself in a short second. And then to my right, we have...
and yes...
and Stacy G,
a fellow poet from both Sacramento and Davis, and they'll tell y'all about themselves later on as well. And so in this podcast, what y'all can look forward to is us talking about all things going on in the poetry world, whether it be Button, Right About Now, to the smaller channels, and even some of you individuals who shoot us some of your work in the future, and all things political that are going on in the artistry world, as well as that are just impacting us as individuals today. And so, but for this first podcast, our inaugural podcast, I think it's best that you guys have an understanding of who we are, why we believe the things that we do, why we think the way that we do, and get a small taste of some of the poetry that we spit. So that's what we're going to dive into first, and I'll get us rolling. Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
All right, so as stated, my name is Brandon Leake. I am born and raised here in Stockton, California, and man, my journey with poetry started off at a young age in middle school when I began to realize that girls were cute, and so
you're one of those poets.
Used to write all these sappy love poems for girls who I thought were cute, and there's actually a pretty funny story that's attached to this too. So in middle school, there was this girl who I thought was really cute. I'm gonna leave people's names out of it because I did this on the news.
Alicia.
We know who you are, Alicia.
We know who you are.
But there's this girl. She'll be called A, and
Alicia.
I wrote her.
It's Alicia.
I wrote her a really cute poem. And looking back on it, the poem was completely trash now. But
wait, you have the poem now?
No, I don't.
Oh. I was looking at your laptop. You can't just say it. I was ready. Roses are red, violets are blue. Your head is nappy. How about you?
Man, that was very close. But not, and this was before the age of texting and everybody having cell phones. This is when you had to either man up and ask the girl out face to face or punk out by writing a note. And so I was like, I'm gonna punk out, but I'm gonna make it sexy. So I had my friend origami fold it into a little crane, and I was like, yo, you can't read it, but you fold it for me, and I'll slide you a Snicker bar. And so I slid him a Snicker bar, and then
a Snicker bar. Wow.
And then he folded it for me, and then I passed it in class, and I was like, hey yo, pass this down to A.
Wait, I love that grade school is prison rules. I'll give you a Snicker bar, bro. You gotta do this paper real quick.
It ain't cigarettes, but it's the best I got. I don't got the candy cigarette shit. It ain't Halloween.
That's where it's at.
No lie, legit exchanged whole packets of crushed up top ramen for the sake of other favors.
So we're gonna do
is when we used to spread the powder in it.
Oh my God. You're gonna make the spread, right? So
tell us about Alicia, though.
Yeah, tell us about A. Her name's
Some
not
woman
really
named
Alicia, by the way.
gonna watch this podcast and be like, it was me. But no, but it never actually ended up for the girl who I had intended it for. It went to one of my really good friends, and then my friend in the back of the classroom was like, psst, yes. And I was like,
oh my
yes,
God.
what? And then I saw the note unfolded on her desk, and I was like, oh, snap.
Oh my God.
And then we ended up dating for 6 months.
Plot twist.
Didn't care to correct her.
Actually, so that crane was supposed to fly south.
So you had a
Not
6-month
Southwest.
relationship because you were too embarrassed to say no, that wasn't you.
Yes. And we ended up dating on and off for all of high school, pretty much,
funny.
and it was wild. But that's how the journey started, and how it really got serious was in college when I stopped playing basketball because I prayed a lot, and I was like, man, yo, I just don't feel like basketball is what I'm being called to do, and the answer to my prayer was actually came in this class called Ministry Practicum, which is where you have to go and do community service for an entire semester and go serve at a local business in your community. And so I listened to this dude who was he started this prayer circle in this high school, and over the course of the 4 years that circle was happening, the graduation rate at his school went from 33% to 87%. And I was like, man, like I want to have that type of positive impact in my community, but prayer circle isn't necessarily the route I want to go. so how does this work? And so I was like, man, I love writing poetry, and I know there's some other artists who don't get the chance to share what they have. So I started what is now Called to Move, which you guys have tapped into because you're watching the YouTube page. I Am Poetry, Called to Move. You can cop this on my website, link below.
I don't have mine on, but I will next time.
And so I started Called to Move, and it was just this artistry collective of people who had these different art styles, and we were just trying to share what we had and wanting to be ourselves. And college happens, we have our first open mic, we only have like 7 people show up, and then but 3 years of labor later, my senior year, we closed out our last open mic at school, and we had like 250 people in the building.
Good Lord.
Wow.
Like massive growth and development. And then everybody graduates, folks get real jobs, and I'm still here like Called to Move, Called to Move. And then I end up moving back to Stockton, and end up joining this wild thing called the Sacramento Poetry Slam team. And we end up going to the National Poetry Slam in Oakland, California. I ended up making the team. And I didn't even really make the team, to be honest with you. I was a reserve. And then one dude just never showed up to the practices, and I got put on the squad.
Very fortuitous. He was this man right here is the only one who wrote team pieces.
Factual. I was on every team piece that season.
Superman versus Goku. Let's do it right now.
Oh my god.
No. But
it's a piece, and we both deleted it because we hate it.
Oh my
and we
God.
did it too much.
Yes, like it had a great novelty to it until everybody was
Superman
like,
won.
do that poem. Be like, no.
Not again.
And poetry began to be like significantly more important to me in my life, and I recognized like, man, my passion for this is something that I'd love to turn into a job, that I'd love to make into a career if I possibly could. Yeah. And I'm not on that starving artist tip. I'm like, nah, like I want to be compensated for what I do. I want to make sure that I can make a living off what I do. And one of the biggest reasons is because I want to own my time. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like the one resource that I can't never get back, I can't never get more of is my time.
Yeah.
And I want to spend my time doing things that I have a passion for, and poetry is one of them. And so I got the chance to do a lot of really dope things that you guys will learn more about, because I'm just trying to briefly synopsis this. Got to do MPS with my man here, as well as we recently did iWhips. Yeah. We both finished in the top 50.
What's iWhips, Brandon?
What is iWhips is the individual world poetry slam. So we were both in the top 100 poets in the world, and we ended up being ranked in the top 50. And so my friend Ale here, TwoSense said,
17.
I was ranked number 17, which is a bittersweet thing. One of these podcasts will go over that.
A bittersweet thing until you find out that I got 49. So this man's upset about doing way better. But that's okay. I'm not bitter.
49 out of 50?
I got 49 because I dropped a piece, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay. But it's not about me, Brandon. Keep going.
But anyway, and now I get the chance to do poetry for a living, for real, and it really makes me happy to know that I get the chance to spend so much of my time with such phenomenal people doing phenomenal work, and helping make our community a better place. And some of my biggest inspirations in terms of my poetic discography and whatnot have been people like Rudy Francisco, Kendrick Lamar, Maya Angelou is also a major influence. Even though I'm not a page poet, like I'm not that type of person. W.E.B. Du Bois, Langston Hughes, a whole lot of black people. But yeah, and I guess like just to close me out on that, I would say like, the art form itself of spoken word is one that I don't think gets enough credit.
This is true.
Like people always like to be like, oh, like like, you do spoken word, like, you know, anybody can go up there and just talk, like, you know what I mean? Like rappers, you know, like, they have to, like, rhyme everything and, like, you know, we do consecutive bars, and I'm like, man, like, if you only understood the level of layering that people put into this effort, the performance aspect of everything, like, it's heavy.
Can we cuss on this podcast?
Oh, yeah, most certainly.
That shit ain't easy. You gotta take this key right here, unlock your shit, and then show everybody, and then put it back and lock it back up.
I mean, we could do a whole podcast just based off of like that whole thing between written poets and spoken word poets.
And we will.
Yeah.
Like that's in the future. We can cover that.
But nah, so who wants to chime in next?
49, or you want 2?
I'll take it.
Go ahead,
I
49.
guess I'll take it. Why am I?
Go ahead.
49. Oh, I get it. Smart ass.
Okay, gotta have an
We're
app
not
for
friends
smart.
anymore. Well, so my stage name is And Yes. That's because I do improv. Yes and is a term in improv that I highly suggest you look up because it would take 30 minutes for me to explain it fully. But my government name is David Loret de Mola. My father is from Cuba. I'm a first-generation Cuban-American poet, born in Detroit area in Michigan.
That's
moved
cold.
to South Sac.
Cold
Moved to New Hampshire. Moved to Folsom. Back to South Sac. Little time in Arizona where I was going to be. Let me slow it down a little bit. So we're going to rewind. I spent my formative years kind of split between South Sac in the middle of like Blood and Crip territory, and then we moved to New Hampshire, which is a bunch of white people, upper middle class, and I was like an outcast for the first 2 years because I got into fights because I just didn't know how to handle like the new situation. I had a lot of anger. There was a lot of death when I was a kid. And so that led me, thankfully, we went back to Folsom. And the whole time, I wrote for myself. I didn't write for anybody else. In fact, nobody even knew that I wrote until high school when a teacher peeked over my shoulder and went like, what are you doing in my class and not paying attention to me for? So I ended up getting in their lit mag. She encouraged me. God knows I can't remember her name, but she was a wonderful person. And that's where I started. My brother Frank, who passed away 2 years ago, he always tried to get me into writing. He would hand me stacks of books. And just like, here's a bunch of poets. And I, who didn't care about studying at the time, would go, thanks, Frank. And then I would forget the books. But yeah, I started doing spoken word in 2013 just about. And the reason why I started doing it, I saw 2 videos. One was from Def Poetry, which was Watsky, V is for Virgin. I just thought it was so entertaining. And I was like, I could write silly things like that. Yeah.
I know that one.
Anyway, and then Buddy Wakefield, who he had just such a wild style to his art, and it was very abstract, but at the same time, you understood everything he was saying by the heart that he said it.
By the way, just to interrupt, it's going to be a little bit late by the time this podcast actually drops, but there's somebody in the room is going to be opening up for Mr. Buddy Wakefield over at Brick House in Sacramento. So make sure that you tap in to see the footage of that, because I'm sure there's going to be footage.
That's what that.
So sorry.
No.
Opening for inspiration. That's
Thank you,
crazy.
because I wouldn't have brought it up. Yeah, it's wild that I get to like perform for one of the people who's the reason why I started this shit.
Tight.
So
That is really dope.
that was 2013 though. 2013, I also got a job with Apple, and I kind of stopped doing the art altogether shortly
I
thereafter.
know how that is.
Yeah, because I had like stable employment and money. Funny how that makes people stop doing
Safety.
things. Yeah, safety,
Health
exactly.
insurance.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs were being met. But after I got fired because I have major depression, I've had it my whole life, and that got the better of me, I dropped back into a place called Luna's Cafe here in Sacramento, not here in Stockton, but here
That's
in
home right there.
Sacramento. And that's the place I started at. That's a place that's always shown me love. I featured there so many times. And I met Jenny and Shonuff there. And when I came back, Jenny wanted to start a slam team. That's where we started what became to be known as SAC Unified. And in 2014, we went to Oakland for the National Poetry Slam just to watch. 2015, thankfully, they did it again in Oakland, so the flight was cheap. No. Just drunk.
The lift was cheap.
The lift was cheap.
Was Lyft even a thing?
No, probably not.
No.
There's still taxis.
Yeah.
Fam, like I just...
It's hard to picture a time before Lyft. Anyway,
Yeah.
moving on. So, did that with my man Brandon over here. And then, God, I've done all sorts of shit.
He's completely spacing on the fact that before we went to NPS in Oakland, this mofo decided to catch a plane with another one of our friends named Ike,
How did I
and then
forget?
went out to freaking Italy.
Yeah.
Oh my
and
God.
did the
Yeah.
Thousands Poets of the World conference or something like that.
So
He could talk about that, but I'm just saying, like, how you gonna miss the fact that passports getting stamped on this joint? Like,
that was so wild. Like when I've done a lot doing spoken word, and I don't say that to show off. That's just factual. So like you forget things. Like the fact that I went to Italy feels like a dream. I know.
My bad, you know what I'm talking about.
Look at me.
Got a little dust on my shoulders, gonna wipe it off.
So it was 100,000 poets for change out in Salerno, Italy. Also, it was around my birthday, so I ended up going to like Spain as like afterwards. It was a wonderful experience. Went with a couple amazing poets, one of which was Ike Torres, who is an amazing artist and like became a celebrity in the streets. People didn't because he's speaking English. Like he does all his poems in English, and where we were, they don't really speak English. They just speak Italian, of course, because we're in Italy. So.
you mean to tell me you Italians here don't speak American?
So we're
Like,
spitting
what
in
is
the
this
streets.
going
We're spitting in the
We
streets,
run
though.
everything.
And we're spitting in the streets, and people are throwing their windows open, and they're yelling, "En italiano, por favor," and like begging him to do it, but they have tears in their eyes because he's such a strong performer. And I learned a lot from him, especially after that trip, about just stagecraft and how to handle myself on stage. And so he became a little bit of a celebrity, though. Like people would pass by on their scooters and every now and then, beep beep. Ah. But so I did that. Did the individual World Poetry Slam. I've run a poetry mentorship thing for youth poets called Operation Free Soul. I ran it's called the Spoken Word Federation that combined pro wrestling, glitz and glamour with spoken word competition. And
He legit built a whole ring.
I built a ring.
A wrestling ring.
Yeah.
Like a whole thing.
Yeah, no. I just put in a grant for it, so if I get the grant, like we're gonna be paying money to poets to do shit.
Get it.
Also,
What a
I'm.
concept. Paying poets money.
I know. Like my man over here talking about how
We ain't no starving artists out here, fam. I ain't on
But
that
I
top
am
ramen
hungry.
tip. My man don't even eat meat over here. He got bills to pay.
So I am on top ramen tip. What's happening?
and like people talk about that
I
all
like
the
the
time.
paisanos.
The number one lie I was fed the whole time that I was doing spoken word before 2015 was, David, you want to make money doing poetry? Like that's not a thing that happens.
Yeah.
You know, we just do this for fun. And that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's just like any other performance art. The difference is that you have to be focused on finding your own path, because spoken word is a little less defined than like stand up, a little less defined than music. There's not a set course that you could follow. There's no railway. So for me, I'm doing it through grants. In 2020, I have a very good shot at actually being able to support myself through grant funding to be Sacramento's resident artist. And that's a very brief glimpse into what I've
Is
done.
that the laureate position?
No. That's with the Sacramento artist in residency.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my man about to be out here doing it big.
Yeah.
Doing it big.
Other than that, I mean, I've done like Planned Parenthood. I worked with them for the Planned Parenthood Roe versus Wade 40th anniversary, the Democratic National Convention, all sorts of shit. And that is my very brief breakdown and
So
scene.
I got a quick question.
Yeah,
though.
what's up?
So what is your favorite poem that you've ever written of yours?
That's hard. So
Don't ask me that.
I have 3 answers to that. And unfortunately, like they're all tied. One is the first spoken word piece proper that I ever wrote, which is called Amen. And that was the first time that I really figured out what my style of spoken word is. And it's a little more lectury. It's a little more like this is life instead of telling my story. Another one is Finding Home in Your Mars, where it's talking about me being Cuban and white in a country that doesn't really accept that. And feeling like an alien. Yeah. But it's a message of love and acceptance of all people. But my favorite right now is it's called Man vs. Depression, where I take a wrestling match. I've been a pro wrestling fan since I was a little kid. And
you're noticing the themes.
Like,
there's a common theme here.
Right? So there's Man vs. Depression, and I literally just tell the story of a wrestling match between Man versus Depression, where Depression beats him in the end, but Man still gets up because he knows he has to fight for himself.
Get those 3 taps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful. There we go, man. So, who would like to dive into the deep end next?
All right. What was that?
Rock, paper, scissors. Rock, paper, scissors.
Ooh, wait a minute. Go figure, paper wins.
I still gotta think of what I gotta say. I'm not gonna keep it coming. Come on now.
On a poetry podcast, paper always wins.
Is there a pen?
That was like
Rock, paper, pen.
Rock, paper, pen. Ooh.
Bing, bing,
So
boom.
my name is Stacy G. I am an Asian American.
G for gangster.
G. That's legitimately my last name. G, like just a letter. I'm an Asian American poet, 2nd generation Asian American. I always consider my parents who immigrated here 1st generation American. And I am actually representing Sacramento at the Women of the World Poetry Slam.
That's
what I'm
Dallas,
about.
Texas, March 5th through the 7th. You
That's
will see me and J-Ro will be there representing Sacramento.
That's tight.
It's going to be my first big national poetry slam, so we'll see how I do. I just want to I just want to learn. That's my goal. It's just like to learn.
Nah, fuck that win.
And for folks who don't know, Woman of the World is very similar to the individual World Poetry Slam, where it's like, except for this is exclusively a woman and woman identifying poetry slam, where it's like, hey, like, you know, we're allowing for some of the most marginalized people to have a space to be able to just be amongst themselves and to talk and to share their stories and to be heard. And so looking forward to having Stacey out there to rock and represent. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm really, really excited for that because it's going to be I just keep hearing about all these things that people go when they go to the poetry slams, like how many slams there are. It's not just like the main stage, but there's like side slams and then there's also workshops. So I'm excited for that. And I'll be representing with J-Ro, and we're still trying to figure out the logistics. We're going to try to do like a send-off tour throughout Sacramento. So we'll be looking out for that.
Yes.
And I got into poetry. I don't know. I've always written like journals and a lot of diaries. And I just remember this one time when I was 10 years old and I was like writing like a story I was writing about my crush, and then like my brother found it. I was like,
I'm telling
Mom. Yeah.
Mom, she like boys.
He's like,
Wait, did his name start with an A?
No.
Running thing.
His name started with a T.
What's in the alphabet range?
It was actually a number.
I am TwoSense. What's up?
Wait, you were in love with Tupac?
That's funny.
So I stopped journaling and I just started writing poetry, and my brother actually thought my poetry was trash, and so that actually encouraged me to write more. And I actually started this journal when I was like about 15 with a friend back in high school, and I would write some poetry in it, and then she's like, oh, okay, now it's my turn to write, like, and then we just exchange that like journal back and forth. I remember this. I just found it recently, like when I was trying to clean out my room and Marie Kondo the space, and I found this journal. It's like this pink journal with like flowers on it and stuff with like high school like handwriting, and and it was definitely a lot of like a lot of love poems in there. I was just like talking about like the brush of his hair and like cheesy stuff. So when I went to college, I had a lot of free time, so much free time that they don't tell you how much. Like you go to class and they're like, what else do I do for the rest of the day?
Go
so-
absorb all of this cafeteria food.
It may
Fresh
be nasty,
recipe.
but you hungry, so you don't eat it.
And I discovered Def Jam poetry, and
Yes.
Lauryn Hill was like the first performance that I saw on YouTube, and I was like, this is a thing, like this is so dope. Erykah Badu and Kanye West was on there. It was just
My
like,
inspirations.
and just like in one day I was just like watching all these poetry videos. I was like, this is a thing that like you don't have to have music while you're while you're performing and doing your art. And then I was in Santa Cruz at the time, and there's actually somebody who started off at the UC Santa Cruz Poetry Slam. Her name is Teresa I'm going to butcher her last name, Gantu. She's a Samoan American poet.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, she's performed queer Samoan American poet, and she has performed at the White House, at the UN, and she talks a lot about like climate change. She talks about her community. She talks about like the education system and how much it's failing the students, and a lot of things that I'm very passionate about and interested in. And she did these amazing slams, like all representing Santa Cruz at the time. And I just threw me into my inspiration, bring me back into my poetry. Then I discovered YouTube is just an amazing tool. Let me just tell you, YouTube is like the gateway to the world.
Everything.
To everything. You want to learn how to replace your floors, or like replace your windows, or how to change the starter on your car, YouTube. But also on YouTube, I found actually one of my favorite poets is Sarah Kay. I don't know if you're all familiar with her, but she is a poet and an educator. She has an amazing TED Talk called B.
Out of New York, right?
Out of New York, yeah.
New York.
New York. And she, and it was a different kind of spoken word poetry that actually felt like I could do that. Like I could like, poetry didn't always have to be like indignant or like angry, even though that's sometimes where it starts off at, you know. It could be also
A lot of
like,
yelling. A lot of yelling.
right? Like
Cynthia.
Alicia, you broke my heart.
So it was it just kept transforming, and all these artists just kept inspiring me to like share my own story. And then I stumbled upon Luna's Cafe 2017.
Yes.
Noticing a trend here.
Comedy.
A little bit of a meeting place.
When I moved back to Davis to be with my family, I went to an open mic or a slam. I forgot what night it was, but it was like Luna's Cafe, and I was just in awe of like the powerful poetry live that I got to absorb and learn from and be inspired by. And I met David, and I met Brandon, and I met Jenny Lynn and Shonuff, and Jenny Lynn was like, "Hey, we have a slam. You should come and do your poetry." And that's how it started. It just kind of snowballed there. And then I featured around Sacramento, and I've gone to Stockton to feature for Brandon's show, because Brandon's been doing, and that's where I met TwoSense.
I was supposed to give you a ride that day.
Yeah.
Finding your ride. You know, when you,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you were clutch. Yeah, you were clutch. You were like...
I drive stick shift. What's up? I was like, okay, I got you. We gonna get to this thing. Might be a little too early, though.
She ended up riding with one of our soon-to-be guests, Chiron, who is one of the most hilarious poets. I still have a line that he needs to use.
Does he have like this fast food poem?
He has a smoothie poem, and he has an office poem.
Okay.
Yeah.
And both of them are comedy. And there's still a line that I tagged him in on Facebook. Sharon, when you watch this, you know what I'm talking about. You need to use that line in one of these poems. And if any of you guys have seen the post, I'll show you right now. But, yes.
Yeah, and it just like became this family, like this poetry family. Just
That's
like
tough.
poetry brought people together from all different walks of life, and I think that's beautiful. Yeah, yes.
Art, dude.
And so I guess from hearing about that, like how, because like I know how the stereotypes go in terms of like, oh, you know, like Asian or Asian American women are usually more mild mannered in terms of both.
Okay, can I just say something really quick
Please
about
do.
that?
I feel like you
Because
touched on it.
I don't know where that came from, because in my family gatherings, like, my aunties are loud as fuck. Like, they're just like yelling at each other and saying like, you're doing this wrong and blah 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 blah. So
Well,
I don't know where
it's
that
media,
like,
right? I mean, like it's
that
like the movies
docile-
that we end up receiving,
I don't
like in the
know.
same way that like when I was outside of the country, like I was perceived very differently.
Yeah.
But also very similarly to how I'm
being black
perceived here in
American.
America.
Yeah.
For being black. Because folks didn't know I was American.
Oh,
they knew I
okay.
was black. But I think they had an inclination that I was African American because we were in New Zealand.
Do you hear that
And-
accent of his?
And like I was with my wife who was white, and what ended up happening was we walked into the store and they were like, "Oh, is he coming to visit you?" Like sort of a thing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like have you ever run into anybody who's like giving you static about that sort of a thing with poetry?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, my parents do have that like typical mentality of like, oh, get a good job and be stable and like make sure that you're doing something that makes money, because you want to make sure that you can survive and take care of your family and yourself and stuff. So poetry, like art in general, has this concept of not making a lot of money. So when I tell people that I'm like, oh, I'm a poet, like I'm an artist also, people are like, what? Like,
That don't
what
make
do
no
you
money.
what do you like poetry on?
What do you poetry? Oh my god. What do you poetry on?
Like,
do you-
oh, that's a nice hobby.
yeah.
But what's your job?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly,
man, that hurt.
exactly. And so I'm just like, I tell my story, I tell what it's like to be Asian American, because I think that there is an experience that mass media does not want us to share, because for whatever, it doesn't make them enough money, or they don't want the truth. And I think that there's a very unique experience being Asian American and trying to navigate, living with immigrant parents, and also trying to figure out like American culture, being born here and raised here. So and that just story is so common, and it's prevalent like across all communities, not just in Asian American communities. So when you move from one place and have like this specific culture mentality or like viewpoint, and then you move to another place, it's like that shift where you're just trying to like still bring with you everything that you know, but also navigate something new at the same time. So like when people ask me like, oh, you're a poet, like that's cute, like that's nice,
But where the big money at? Let's talk about that.
right
Wrote a poem about it. Understood.
So, just as a brief side note, I swear he should use this in a lot.
The line for our viewers is
No, you don't do that. I'm gonna put it on the screen.
okay. Well, I'll read it anyway for the people who can't read. Is
Or
butt
see.
cheeks one word, or should I spread them apart?
In
That's
Chiron's
pretty
voice, that would be
That would play.
gold.
Butt cheeks,
Just
one
throwing
word.
that out
We
there.
spread it apart.
So,
That's comedy.
Chiron, use that line in a poem. It's not copyright. I promise.
Oh man.
That
And
reminds me of when I was doing improv and I'd say something funny. People are like, "You should use that in like your improv." I'm
Shitty
like,
conversation.
yeah.
That's comedy.
and our last person of the day.
How y'all doing? My name's TwoSense. I am from Sacramento, California. Born and raised, South Sac to be exact, from Elder Creek. And what is the other questions?
I mean, like, where
What
does
introduced
2 cents
me?
come from?
That's a good question. No, that's a good
That's a
question.
great question.
All right, so I always have something to say, like about everything, and so I start off first off music and then dancing. So my dance career, I was like, you know what? I need an artist name. I need a dance name. And I was talking to my boy Paul, or Concept at the time, and I'm on the Goodfellas, a dance crew called the Goodfellas, and I was like, yo, I need a name. What can I be? And we just kept going through random stuff. I can't even remember all the names because we didn't get far with the names, because we were like, yo, I always got something to say. I always got my 2 cents in. Yo, that's it. 2 cents. So it's TwoSense, but spelled TWOSENSE because I believe visual and auditory learning are the strong suits. So and then that's where my crafts also tailor towards. So TwoSense is then converted from the money to the senses.
Double entendres.
Making sense.
He could turn that into a triple if he goes with the other one too. Common sense.
Yes.
But then he'd have to be 3 cents.
And then I would have to shave my head bald and, you know, rap about how I met hip hop at 10 years old. So, yeah, but that's how I became TwoSense. And ever since, I mean, Ale has always been like artistically sounding, but it's just short for my full name. My government, which is Alejandro Helio Jose Hernandez, which is very deceiving because I'm a mutt. And I consider myself black, but then I have this Japanese in me, and then Spanish, and then Native American, Creole, and black, and yeah, I'm a crockpot. But what got me into poetry is all my life I've been raised around music. So my pops played saxophone for the longest, just jazz. Always brought me everywhere. I would hear my pops sing his songs, and all the artists around me would also sing what they got to sing. So I was always around music. And then, so I picked up the saxophone. First, I picked up the recorder, then saxophone, then tried playing drums, then tried to play piano and all that stuff. So music is like in my blood. But then I started finding dance more attractive. So back in the hyphy days, 2008 days, I used to be a dancer, just straight dancer. Just a little sidebar, back when I was young, I found this little poetry book I wrote. I'm wondering to myself why I didn't get sent to the office for this poetry book, because one of the lines I remember in this poetry book was, "I wonder if anybody cared if I died."
Oh.
And that's like a big red flag, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't think I was depressed back then, but maybe I was. I've been through some shit. Some shit I was. But moving forward, into college, so I wrote poetry like in books, of course. I don't know if love got me into it, but I do I know that Def Jam poetry was my big inspiration. Common. Most Def, Talib Kweli, I think it was on there, and then we got Erykah Badu, of course. I'm in love with Erykah Badu. Freaking John Legend.
I'm gonna be honest.
Go ahead, be honest.
I've actually never listened to Erykah Badu.
Oh,
wow.
My God.
Do we need to play some? Okay.
I am not part of this podcast anymore.
We'll play it afterwards.
I'm just gonna be honest with you, and then everybody's like, "Oh my God, Erykah Badu is so awesome." I'm like,
I'll just say the second word in her name, Badu, is very appropriate.
But
Badu.
but I there is one song I've heard.
Which one?
You can call on Tyrone. And the only reason is because my biological father's name is Tyrone. So I listened to that song one time.
Oh my God.
Just for the sake of trying to see what it was about. So
Get your shit. But that's funny. So that was some of my inspirations. Going into college, so I used to work at IHOP. I used to work night shifts at IHOP, graveyard shifts. Yeah. And before I leave, so I lived in Elder Creek, and so I was around Coon the Poet a lot.
Yeah.
So he's like my brother, and he like I was really fascinated with his ability to rhyme. But we would be a bunch of the dudes out front of my garage, starting at like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then I would have to leave for work, and I wouldn't come home until like 3, and then I have to go to college right after my first class was like at 7. But these fools would not let me in the house after my graveyard shift until I drank a little bit and spit with them. So over time, after being around them a lot, I started getting an affinity for rhyming a certain type of way and becoming okay and then decent at poetry. And it all started with freestyling.
Nice.
So that's where my like of spoken word. I don't know when I actually start putting the word spoken word to what I do. But yeah, my brother is a Coon, a poet, and the other brothers I used to raise, I was raised around, and then this dude named Slim used to always come around because my brother Victor was a producer, and so he was always trying to write music too. And I remember I used to be able to trying to copy him. I have a line in my head I can't remember right now, but it usually comes back to me. that I would always like try to write down and make a big old poem or rap about it. But so those are my influences. Really, really art heavy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so now I'm kind of new to the spoken word scene, to be honest, because like I'm just ignorant to the world. I swear I am.
Really? You're doing a lot though.
Yeah,
Because I'm like, this was like 2.5 years that we linked up?
Yeah, that we officially linked up. So that was at Luna's, right?
No, it was actually Terry Moore.
Terry Moore. I think it was before that. Did you ever perform at Midtown Out Loud with Heather Anderson?
Yes.
Yes. So I think I saw you at Midtown Out Loud because Midtown Out Loud.
We miss you, Heather.
Yeah, we for sure miss you.
Very much.
But that was actually my first spoken word anything, my first open mic. Yeah. And then I started loving it afterwards. My boy RJ was like, yo, let's just do it. So he goes and he does more comedy poetry, and I think I did a piece called Eventually. That was probably one of my favorite pieces. Yeah. But after that, I just fell in love with the mic. And then I always loved attention, always being the center of attention. And then I learned how to fine-tune and craft it to be able to pull somebody into my world as an artist.
Yeah.
For them to see my perspective and they can relate to it.
Yeah.
We can't let you leave this podcast without telling people your Instagram, because you have some amazing shit that you put on there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
What's your Instagram for these people?
My Instagram is TwoSense.AH. TWOSENSE.AH. I do cool stuff sometimes. Yeah, just been, like I said, I'm ignorant to the world right now. So I just learned about eye whips. I don't even know the competition you're going towards. I'm just doing what I know I love to do. And then little by little, people like Brandon will like send me opportunities my way or say, hey, you should get up on this or something. So slowly my knowledge of the spoken word poetry world is becoming more pure and like in tune with me. But yeah.
Some fun stuff that he and I got planned. We're going to be going to America's Got Talent in January.
Yes.
Going to go try to be the first poets to ever hit the AGT stage. I know they got some complications with some racial issues right now, but y'all can make up for that by putting us on the show.
Yeah, put us on the show. You put me on the show, you down there putting all of America because I'm that mixed.
May I show you your PR meal ticket?
Oh man. But I had one question, but I was thinking about asking, like, what are some of your guys' aspirations with the art? But that could be a whole separate podcast.
Yeah, I think
we could dive into.
Yeah.
So we'll hold that for now. But I do have a question for y'all as we bring this first podcast to a close. I would love to know, what is your favorite poem? And if it's on YouTube, make sure that you go find the link, grab it, and then post it down below in the comments, because we would love to be able to find it, and we'll feature one of you guys in our next video.
Yes.
And highlight the poem that you guys have. It doesn't matter whether or not you get the most likes in the comment section or the least likes. It doesn't matter. It's just going to be, we're going to look at some of the poems and be like, that one right there, that one touches. Thank y'all for tuning in, for joining us for our inaugural episode of the Poets in Politics. What you'll find below is each and every single one of our social media accounts, so that way you can follow us. Folks got merch that you can purchase, because as stated, we ain't no starving artists. We do this for a living. And you can support us by clicking the links down below and purchasing some of the merch. We have books, soon to be chapbooks, dropping. We got t-shirts and soon to be jackets dropping. I got all sorts of clothing, and if you guys would like, I got albums on iTunes and stuff.
He got everything, bro.
I have a book as well.
Beans, greens, tomatoes, potatoes, and chicken. And they all say call to move.
His entire wardrobe is just called to move stuff.
His backpack.
Like a cartoon character, like how you look in the closet, it's all the same outfit.
It's all Acme.
I don't wear anybody else's merch because I'm self-promoting like a mug right now. And since it's cold, grab a beanie, grab a hoodie,
The call to move underwear is a little much, I guess.
You know what I mean? It says CTM right on the...
Anyway. Move. You know what I mean?
Call to manifest. Talking about.
I love you, babe. Call them out.
I am married, sir.
But
Call to marry.
Oh. Does Alicia know?
Hey.
We gonna catch y'all next time. We love y'all. This is Poets and Politics, where poets come together and we talk about all things poetry and politics.
Bingo.
Gang, gang.